I was in college when it happened. It was my junior year, and I had just moved into a cheap off-campus apartment with a roommate I barely knew. His name was Ryan. He was quiet, mostly kept to himself, and we didn't talk much beyond the basics. I had found the place through Craigslist, and the rent was low, which was all I really cared about. The building was old thin walls, creaky floors, and a hallway light that flickered whenever you walked past. But it was close to campus and seemed safe enough. The first few weeks were normal. Classes started, and I spent most of my time either on campus or in my room studying. Ryan worked late hours and was usually out at night, so we rarely crossed paths. One thing I noticed early on, though, was that he always locked his bedroom door. Even when he went to the bathroom or to the kitchen, he'd close the door behind him and lock it. I thought it was strange, but not my business. One night, I came home from the library around midnight. The apartment was dark and quiet. I slipped off my shoes and went to the kitchen to get some water. That's when I noticed the front door was slightly open. Not wide open, just cracked. At first, I thought maybe I hadn't shut it all the way when I left, but then I remembered locking it. I always did. I stood there for a second, heart starting to pound, listening for any sounds inside the apartment. Everything was still. I slowly pushed the door closed and locked it again. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept hearing noises, faint creaks, like someone walking slowly down the hallway. But every time I got up to check, the place was empty. Ryan's door was shut, as always. The next morning, I asked him if he had come in after me, maybe left. The door opened by mistake. He said no. He hadn't been home at all that night. He even looked a little annoyed that I'd asked. The next day, I noticed my keys were missing. I always kept them in a small bowl by the door, my house key, my car, key, and a little plastic tag for the gym. I searched the whole apartment, top to bottom, but they were just gone. I called campus security and told them I lost them. They gave me a temporary access card for the library and my dorm mailbox. I also had to borrow Ryan's spare apartment, key for a few days until I could get a new copy made. He handed it over without a word and went back to his room. About 3 nights later, I woke up to a sound. It wasn't loud, just a soft click, like a door latch. I sat up in bed, heart racing, and listened. Another sound, soft footsteps on the hardwood floor. I glanced at my bedroom door, which I always kept closed, and realized I had forgotten to lock it. I slid out of bed as quietly as I could and grabbed my phone, turning on the flashlight. I opened the door slowly and peeked into the hallway. It was empty. I tiptoed toward the living room, the light from my phone sweeping over the walls and floor. Nothing looked out of place. Then I heard something from the kitchen, a drawer opening. I froze. I didn't say anything. I didn't want whoever it was to know I was awake. I backed up, still holding my phone, and slipped into the bathroom. I locked the door and held my breath. After a few minutes, I heard the front door open and close. I waited a bit longer, then finally came out. The kitchen drawer, the one where we kept scissors, tape, and other junk, was wide open. A knife was missing. I checked the front door. It was unlocked. Ryan's door was shut, and the light under it was off. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I confronted Ryan. I asked him straight up if he had been in the kitchen last night. He looked at me like I was crazy. He said he had worked the overnight shift and hadn't been home since yesterday afternoon. I didn't believe him. I asked him why he always locked his room. He shrugged and said he just liked his privacy. I called the landlord that day and asked if the locks had been changed recently. She said no, not since the last tenant. That's when it hit me someone else might still have a copy of the key. Maybe the last tenant, maybe someone else entirely. I changed the locks myself that weekend. Bought a new set at the hardware store and installed them while Ryan was out. When he came back, I gave him a new key. He didn't say much, but I saw him looking at the front door for a long time before going into his room. That should have been the end of it. But 2 nights later, I woke up again to that click. I had locked my door this time. I grabbed my phone and sat up, listening. Footsteps again, slow, careful. They stopped outside my room. I held my breath. The doorknob turned slightly. Just a small movement. Someone was testing it. Then nothing. Silence. I didn't move. I just sat there in the dark until the sun came up. The next morning, I checked. The door. No signs of forced entry. Nothing broken. But I noticed something else: my old keys. They were back in the bowl by the door. I never found out who took them or how they got back. Ryan moved out a few weeks later without a word. I stayed until the end of the semester, but kept a chair pushed against the door every night. I never saw anything, never caught anyone. But I never felt safe there again. Sometimes, even now, I wake up in the middle of the night thinking I hear that same soft click. And I wonder, did someone make another copy? I just moved into a small studio apartment after a bad breakup. I didn't have much, just a mattress on the floor and a couple boxes. I couldn't afford real furniture, so I started checking Craigslist for anything free. That's when I saw the listing, free couch, lightly used. Must pick up today. No photo, just a number and an address. I texted the number. A woman named Claire responded right away. She said the couch was on the curb already, and if I could get there soon, it was mine. The address was only 20 minutes away, so I grabbed a friend, Mike, and borrowed his truck. The house was on a quiet street in an older part of town, one of those neighborhoods with big oaks, cracked sidewalks, and homes from the 50s that hadn't been renovated. The couch was right where she said it'd be, an old but decent-looking blue one with wooden legs. I looked around. No one was outside, and the windows of the house were dark. I texted Claire again. "Hey, I'm here grabbing the couch now." "Thanks." No reply. Whatever. It was free. We loaded it up, drove it back to my place, and shoved it against the wall opposite the TV. That night, I passed out on it with Netflix playing in the background. It smelled a little musty, like old books, and maybe a bit of dog, but nothing unbearable. Around 2 a.m., I woke up freezing. The air felt colder than it should have been, like I'd left the door open, but everything was shut tight. I pulled a blanket around me and chalked it up to the AC, kicking in too hard. The next night, I had a nightmare. I don't usually dream much, but this one stuck with me. In it, I was lying on the couch, completely paralyzed. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. I could just feel something standing behind me, breathing, watching. It didn't touch me. It just waited. I woke up drenched in sweat. I told Mike about it the next day, and he joked that I probably brought back bugs or something worse. But I didn't see any bugs. Nothing moved. The place was just off. That evening, I lit a candle and tried to relax. I avoided the couch and sat on the floor instead. That's when I noticed something. There were scratches on the wall behind the couch. Faint, but definitely there. Not scuff scratches, like from fingernails or something harder, like metal. I pushed the couch away from the wall and found a small tear underneath the cushion. Curiosity got the better of me, so I reached in. My fingers brushed something cold out. It was a small Ziploc bag duct taped shut. Inside were 3 Polaroids, blurry, overexposed. They showed what looked like the same room, the same couch, with someone lying on it. A man, I think, but in the last photo, his eyes were open, wide open, like he'd just seen something terrifying. There was no name, no date, just that expression. I texted Claire again. "Hey, can I ask where the couch came from?" No reply. I called straight to voicemail. That night, I slept on the mattress again. I dreamed of the couch. I saw it in my dream, sitting in a different room, dirty, concrete walls, a single light bulb hanging above it. Someone else was on it now, lying there, not moving. I don't know who they were, but I was standing in the corner, watching. Next morning, I put the couch on the curb with a free sign and posted it on Craigslist. I used a burner email. Within an hour, someone picked it up. A guy in a red pickup. Didn't say much. I didn't stop him. I didn't warn him. I just stood in the window and watched as he drove away. I haven't had any weird dreams since. But sometimes I wonder if he has. Or if he ever found the pictures. I still have one of them. I don't know why I kept it, but sometimes when I look at it, I swear the guy's eyes are looking right at me. I found the ad on Craigslist late one night while looking for a place to stay. I'd just gotten a job in a new city, and everything nearby was either too expensive or already taken. Then I saw it, room for rent, private bathroom, $400 a month. Female preferred. The price was almost too good to be true, but I clicked anyway. There were a few blurry pictures of a small but clean room with a twin bed, desk, and a window. The listing said it was available immediately, and the landlord was a woman named Karen. I emailed her, and she replied almost right away. She said I could move in the next day if I wanted. She seemed friendly, even a little overly excited for me to come by. I should have been more cautious, but I was tired and broke and out of options. I showed up around noon the next day. The house was in a quiet neighborhood on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, but nice enough freshly mowed lawn, potted plants by the door, wind chimes tinkling. Karen answered right away when I knocked. She was in her late 50s, maybe early 60s, with short gray hair and a soft voice. She smiled a lot, like too much. Something about it felt forced. Still, the room looked just like the pictures, and the price was real. No deposit, no lease. "Just promise you'll keep it quiet and clean," she said. I agreed, and she handed me a key. At first, it seemed fine. Karen mostly kept to herself, but I'd hear her sometimes walking around late at night, talking to herself behind her closed door. She'd hum weird, tuneless songs or mutter things I couldn't quite make out. I figured maybe she was just lonely. The house had 2 bedrooms on opposite ends with the kitchen in the middle. She had her space, and I had mine. Still, I started keeping my door locked at night. After a week, small things started bothering me. I'd wake up to find the lights in my room turned off, even though I knew I'd left them on. One morning, my toothbrush was wet, even though I hadn't used it yet. Then I noticed my laundry basket was slightly moved, just enough to feel like someone had been inside my room when I was out. I tried to brush it off. Maybe I was just imagining things, or maybe Karen had come in to clean. but she never mentioned it. One night, I stayed up late watching something on my laptop. Around 2 a.m., I got up to get some water. The house was dead silent. I tiptoed into the kitchen, trying not to make noise. As I opened the fridge, I heard her door creak open behind me. I froze. She stood there in the hallway in her nightgown, just staring. No expression, no words, just watching me. I said, "Oh, sorry, did I wake you?" She didn't answer. Just stared for a few more seconds, then turned and walked back into her room, slowly shutting the door behind her. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I started looking for other places to live. I told myself I could make it another week or two, maybe just until payday. But I started keeping my suitcase packed, just in case. That night, I locked my door, pushed my dresser in front of it, and kept a flashlight beside my bed. I knew something was off. I could feel it. The house felt wrong, too quiet, too still. Like it was waiting. At around 3 a.m., I woke up to a soft tapping sound. At first, I thought it was a tree branch hitting the window. Then I realized it was coming from the door. Tap, tap, tap. I sat up, heart pounding. I didn't say anything. I just waited. The tapping stopped. I heard a low whisper on the other side of the door, so faint I couldn't understand the words. Then the doorknob turned, slowly. It didn't open. It couldn't. Not with the dresser there, but it turned anyway, over and over, like she was testing it. I stayed frozen in bed until morning. When I came out, Karen was in the kitchen, humming, and making tea like nothing had happened. She smiled and said, "You sleep okay?" I just nodded and said I had an early shift. I left with my bag and never went back. I stayed with a coworker for a few nights and found another room by the end of the week. I didn't even go back for my stuff. I told Karen I'd changed my plans, and she just replied with, "That's probably for the best." A few weeks later, I saw a new Craigslist ad pop up, same wording, same price, same pictures. I clicked on the poster's email. It was different from before, but something about the tone felt identical, like the same person pretending to be someone else. I reported the ad, but it kept showing up again and again, slightly changed each time. Sometimes it was under a different name. Once it said, "Mature student preferred." Another time, "Quiet, artist welcome." Always the same photos. Always the same room. I don't know what would have happened if I'd stayed longer. I still think about those nights, the toothbrush, the locked door, the tapping. I wonder how many other people answered. That ad. I wonder if any of them stayed. I was living in a small town just outside the city, trying to save money while finishing night classes. I didn't have a car at the time, and the bus schedule was terrible, especially late at night. So I started browsing Craigslist, looking for carpools or ride shares. I found a post from someone named Dave offering rides to the city 3 days a week. The ad said he was a reliable, safe driver with a clean record and only asked for gas money. He listed his phone number and said he preferred people who didn't talk too much. That made me laugh, so I texted him. He replied almost instantly, saying he could pick me up at 5:30 p.m. sharp the next day, just down the block from my place. He said he was punctual and asked me not to be late. The next evening, I waited on the corner as agreed. Right at 5:30, a gray Honda Civic pulled up. It looked clean and well kept, just like he said. The driver, Dave, rolled down the window and gave me a small nod. He was in his 40s, quiet looking, with a plain face and thick glasses. "You must be Jenna," he said. His voice was flat, calm. I got in and thanked him. The car smelled like air freshener and something else I couldn't quite place, kind of metallic, almost like old pennies. I tried not to overthink it. Drive was quiet, like he'd promised. He didn't play music, didn't talk unless I did. That first ride wasn't uncomfortable, just odd. He drove perfectly speed limit, full stops, hands always at 10 and 2. I asked how long he'd been doing ride shares. He said, "A while." That was it, no other details. He dropped me. Off on time, I gave him $5 and he said, "Same time Thursday." I nodded and he drove away without another word. We kept the routine for a couple of weeks. I started getting used to the silence. Still, I noticed strange little things each time, like how he never made phone calls. His phone was mounted on the dash, but I never saw it light up. No notifications, no texts, nothing. Also, he never looked tired. Not once. No yawning, no coffee cups. Just that same blank stare, hands firmly on the wheel. And I never saw anyone else in his car. No signs of kids, no junk, not even a jacket in the backseat. It was like the car existed for this one purpose, driving me to class and back. One night, I had to cancel last minute. I texted him in the afternoon, apologizing and saying I'd take the bus. He didn't respond. That was weird because he always replied, even if it was just a thumbs up. The next morning, I woke up to a text from an unknown number. It said, "You were missed." No name, no context. Just that. The message made my skin crawl. I didn't reply. The next time I rode with him, I pretended nothing was wrong. He didn't bring it up either. I wondered if maybe I was overreacting. But a few minutes into the drive, he suddenly said, "You should let me know if you're ever in trouble. Some people disappear." I looked over at him, but he was staring straight ahead, calm as ever. I laughed nervously and said, "Yeah, I guess that's true." I turned toward the window and didn't say another word. After that, I became more careful. I started sharing my location with a friend every time I got in his car. I texted her the license plate and told her to check in with me every night after class. I even considered quitting the rides altogether, but money was tight and I didn't have a better option. The next few rides were uneventful, almost too normal. He didn't say anything weird. Nothing strange happened. But I never felt relaxed out one night. We were driving home a little later than usual. It was raining and the roads were slick. He drove the same way he always did, slow and steady. But about halfway through the trip, he suddenly took a turn onto a road we never used. I asked, "Hey, is this a shortcut?" He said, "It's safer this way tonight," but it didn't feel safer. The road was empty and lined with thick trees on both sides. No streetlights, no houses. Just darkness. I gripped my bag tightly, heart pounding. I tried to stay calm. "Where are we exactly?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Not far now." That's it. I started watching the GPS on my phone without him noticing. The dot was moving, but not toward my house. I texted my friend quickly, "Call me in 5 minutes. Emergency." Just as I hit send, Dave pulled the car over. No warning. Just stopped in the middle of this empty road. He turned off the engine but left the lights on. I asked, trying to sound calm, "Is something wrong?" He stared ahead, not at me, and said, "I don't usually do this, but I need to fix something in the trunk." "Stay inside." Then he got out and walked around the back. I didn't wait. I unbuckled, grabbed my bag, and bolted out the passenger side, running into the trees. I didn't look back. I just ran and ran, branches hitting my face, shoes slipping in the mud. After what felt like forever, I saw a porch light in the distance. I banged on the door until a confused older man answered. I begged him to call the police. When they arrived, Dave and the car were gone. They searched the area but found nothing. No trace of him. The number he used to text me was disconnected. His Craigslist ad disappeared the next day. I gave the police the license plate, but it didn't match any registered vehicle in the state. It was like he never existed. I don't take rides from strangers anymore. I don't even use rideshare apps. I still wonder what was in the trunk, and I think about the way he said, "Some people disappear." Sometimes I wonder if that road was only ever meant to be one way for someone else before me. I had just moved into a new apartment, tiny, bare, and quiet. It was my first time living alone, and money was tight. I didn't have much furniture yet, just a mattress on the floor, a folding chair, and a few kitchen items. I spent most of my time sitting on the floor with my laptop. One night, I decided to check Craigslist for free furniture. There's a section just for stuff people are giving away. Sometimes they're in rough shape, but I didn't care. I just needed something to sit on. That's when I saw it. Free couch, must pick up tonight. The photo showed a large, dark brown couch in decent condition. The post said it had been lightly used and the owner was getting rid of it before moving out the next morning. It was only 20 minutes away. I messaged right away, and the guy replied instantly. His name was Rob. He gave me an address and said to come by after 9 p.m. I asked if that was too late, and he said, "No, that's perfect, less traffic." I asked if he could help me carry it down. He replied, "Don't worry, I'll be here." I didn't think much of it at the time. I was just glad to get a couch for free. I borrowed my cousin's truck and arrived around 9:15. The house was in a quiet neighborhood. No lights on nearby. His porch light was off too, which was weird. I parked and texted him that I was outside. No answer. I waited a few minutes, then knocked on the front door. Still nothing. I was about to leave when the door creaked open. Rob stood in the doorway, tall and thin, wearing jeans and a white t-shirt that looked damp. His face was pale, and his eyes seemed off, like he hadn't slept in days. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You're here for the couch?" he asked. I nodded. "Come in," he said. "It's just down the hall." I hesitated. Something about the way he stood there made me uneasy, but I told myself not to be rude. I followed him. Inside, the house was mostly empty. Boxes stacked in corners, a few open closets, but barely any furniture. It smelled musty, like wet carpet and something else I couldn't name. The hallway was dim, lit by a single bulb. "It's back here," Rob said. His voice was low and hoarse, like he hadn't spoken all day. I followed him down the hall into a small living room. The couch was there, just like the photo. It looked fine old, but not damaged. "You can take it," he said. "I'm done with it." I asked if he could help carry it out, and he nodded. We lifted one end each and began dragging it toward the door. That's when I noticed something. The carpet under where the couch had been was a different color, darker, like it had been stained. I asked, "Did something spill here?" Rob didn't answer right away. Then he muttered, "Yeah, I dropped some paint." But the stain didn't look like paint. It looked like something had soaked deep into the floor. I didn't push it. We got the couch out the door, loaded it onto the truck, and I thanked him. As I turned to leave, Rob said, "Just don't open the cushions." I froze. "What?" I asked. He smiled again, that weird, tight smile. "They're a pain to put back on. Just leave them alone." I laughed nervously and said, "Okay." Then I got in the truck and drove off. Back at my apartment, I dragged the couch inside by myself. It was heavier than I expected, but I managed. I was tired, so I left it in the middle of the room and collapsed on it. It smelled a little off, like old fabric and something faintly sweet and sour. I figured I'd clean it the next day. The next morning, I started vacuuming the cushions. I remembered what Rob said about not opening them, but curiosity got the better of me. One of the seat cushions had a small tear underneath, and I could see something stuffed inside. I pulled at it gently, and a folded piece of paper slid out. It was stained and crumpled. I unfolded it slowly. It was a photo. A woman sitting on that same couch, smiling at the camera. Her eyes were red and puffy like she'd been crying. She had bruises on her arms. I flipped the photo over. On the back, written in shaky handwriting, it said, "Help me, he won't let me leave." I stared at the photo for a long time, my heart pounding. I checked the rest of the cushions. Nothing else inside. I didn't know what to do. Was it a joke? A prank? Or was it real? I thought about Rob, the way he looked, the stain on the carpet, how rushed he seemed to get rid of. The couch. I felt sick. I called the non-emergency police line and told them everything. They sent an officer to my place, took the photo, and asked me some questions. I gave them Rob's address, the time, everything I could remember. The officer didn't say much. He just nodded and said someone would follow up. A week passed. Then 2. No one ever called me back. I tried searching online for anything missing persons, crime reports, even news about that neighborhood. Nothing. I even drove past the house again. It was completely empty. Windows boarded up, grass overgrown. Like no one had lived there in years. I ended up getting rid of the couch. I couldn't sit on it without thinking about that photo. I left it on the curb with a sign that said, "Free." It was gone by the next morning. Sometimes I wonder if whoever took it will find something too. Or maybe they won't. After months of job hunting, I was getting desperate. I'd just been laid off, bills were stacking up, and I was down to my last few $100s. One night, I came across a Craigslist ad titled, "Assistant needed, $22 hour, flexible hours, cash paid." It was posted just a few hours earlier. The description was vague. Someone named Mr. Whitaker needed help organizing files and lighthouse work. No experience required. It didn't give much info about the business, but I didn't care. I emailed immediately. An hour later, I got a reply asking if I could come in for an interview the next morning at 10 a.m. The address was to a private house, not an office, which gave me pause, but again, I needed the money. I arrived at 9:55. It was a plain-looking house on a quiet street, one of those older homes with low fences and a long porch. The blinds were shut tight. I rang the bell, and after a few seconds, the door opened. A tall man in his 60s stood there, wearing slacks and a button-up shirt. His eyes were pale blue, and he didn't blink much. "You must be Rachel," he said, right on time. He smiled, but there was something stiff about it, like he was copying a smile he'd seen in a book. I followed him inside. The living room was clean, but strange too clean. No pictures on the walls, no magazines, no personal touches. Just a brown couch, a floor lamp, and a small bookshelf with a single row of matching binders. He gestured for me to sit while he sat across from me in a leather chair. "I like to keep things simple," he said. "I need someone organized, someone who follows directions." He spoke slowly, carefully, like he was choosing every word. I nodded, unsure what to say. He asked a few standard questions: where I'd worked, what I was good at, if I had reliable transportation. But then his questions got weird. He asked if I lived alone, if anyone expected me home that day, if I told anyone where I was going. I tried to laugh it off, saying my roommate knew where I was, but his expression didn't change. "That's smart," he said. "Always let someone know where you are." My stomach started to knot. I looked around the room again. There were no clocks, no windows open, no sound of a TV or radio. It felt like a place that didn't want to be found. He stood up and said, "Let me show you the workspace." I followed him down a narrow hallway. There were several doors, all closed, except for one at the end, slightly ajar. He pushed it open, revealing a small room with a desk, a filing cabinet, and more of those identical binders. "This is where you'd be working," he said, "mostly filing, sometimes errands. Nothing too difficult." I nodded slowly. Then I noticed the room had no windows, not even a vent. The door had a heavy latch on the inside, the kind you see on basement storm shelters. My body went cold. He stepped inside, motioning for me to follow. I stayed by the door. "What are in the binders?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He said, "Records, notes, things I've collected over the years." I glanced down at one on the desk. It had no label, just a number written in small black print, 47. He reached for it, like he was going to open it, but I suddenly said, "Actually, I forgot I had another interview. I really should go." His hand stopped. He didn't say anything for a second, then turned to me slowly. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Most people would be lucky to get this job." I smiled tightly. "Yeah, I appreciate your time. I'll be in touch." I backed out of the room, heart racing, and made my way toward the front door. I didn't hear him following, but I didn't stop to check. I opened the door, stepped outside, and walked quickly to my car. As soon as I shut the door, I locked it and drove off without looking back. My hands were shaking on the wheel. I didn't know what I had just walked into, but I knew something wasn't right. When I got home, I looked up the address online. Nothing came up, no listing, no name attached. I tried searching Mr. Whitaker Craigslist and found a few scattered forum posts. People talking about odd interviews. Some said they were creeped out, like me. One person said they never made it out. That post was old, 5 years old, and the replies were full of people asking for updates, but there were none. The thread ended, and the account that posted it was deleted. I reported the ad, but I doubt anything happened. It was taken down a day later, but who's to say it didn't pop up again somewhere else under a new name? Every so often, I still search for it just to see if he's still out there, still waiting for someone desperate enough to walk through his door. I wonder what's in those binders. I wonder what would have happened if I had stepped all the way inside that windowless room. And most of all, I wonder how many people didn't walk back out. A few years ago, I was working as a part-time cleaner while trying to save money for college. Most of my shifts were overnight, which didn't bother me. I actually preferred working when the building was empty. It was an old office complex, just off the freeway, with 2 floors, flickering lights, and outdated furniture. The company had downsized, so only a few businesses still rented space there. My job was to vacuum, wipe down desks, and empty trash cans. It was lonely work, but quiet. Most nights I didn't see a single person. I just put on my headphones and cleaned room by room. One night, my supervisor asked if I could cover an extra shift for a coworker who'd called out. I said sure. That meant working from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. on a Friday, which I thought would be easy, no one would be around. When I showed up that night, the parking lot was almost empty, just one other car, a dark sedan parked way in the back. I figured it belonged to a security guard or someone working late. I clocked in and started on the 2nd floor. Everything felt normal at first. I moved through the offices, spraying down keyboards and collecting trash. Around midnight, I noticed one of the hallway lights flickering faster than usual. It made this buzzing sound like a fly trapped in a light bulb. I made a note to report it, then kept moving. That's when I heard footsteps, light, uneven, coming from around the corner. I paused, thinking maybe security was making rounds. But when I stepped into the hallway, no one was there. I brushed it off. Old buildings make noise, I told myself. A few minutes later, I passed one of the side offices and saw something odd. The door, which I knew I had closed earlier, was wide open. I walked in, thinking maybe I'd forgotten, but the air inside felt cold. Not cold, like someone had just opened a freezer. I checked the thermostat on the wall, but it wasn't on. I quickly emptied the trash and moved on. About an hour later, I was in the break room, taking a short break and eating a sandwich. I heard the sound again, footsteps, this time faster, like someone walking quickly down the hall. I turned off my music and waited. Nothing. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement through the frosted glass of the break room door. A shadow passed by, tall and slow. I stood up, heart racing, and opened the door. The hallway was empty. I checked both ends, no one. "Hello?" I called out. My voice echoed slightly. No response. At that point, I figured maybe the person in the parked car came back in. Maybe someone was working late after all. But when I checked the logbook near the lobby, where all visitors and night staff are supposed to sign in, no one else had signed in but me. That didn't make sense. I decided to finish early and go downstairs to do the final trash run. The lower level was always the creepiest. It had fewer lights and the hallways seemed tighter. I saved it for last every time. As I emptied bins, near the back exit, I heard something behind me. I turned quickly and there was nothing, just the faint hum of the vending machine nearby. Then I saw the bathroom door slowly creaking open. I hadn't touched it. No one else should have been. Down there, I stood still, frozen. The lights above the bathroom flickered. Then I heard the sink turn on, just for a second. Then off. I dropped the trash bag and ran back upstairs, straight to the security desk. The monitor that showed the security cams was on, but there were only static images. None of the cameras were loading. I picked up the radio to call someone, but it only gave off static. At this point, I decided I was done for the night. I went back upstairs to grab my things, but when I got to the supply closet, the door was locked. I never locked it. The keys were inside. My bag was inside. My phone was inside. I started to panic. I was about to go find something to pry the door open when I heard a loud crash from downstairs. It sounded like metal slamming on tile. I didn't want to check, but I also didn't want to be stuck without my stuff. I ran to the manager's office, found a spare key in the drawer, and opened the closet. I grabbed my things as fast as I could and ran out of the building. When I got outside, that dark sedan was still in the back of the lot. I slowed down, staring at it. The windows were fogged from the inside, like someone had been sitting in there for hours. I walked quickly past it, not daring to look in. I jumped into my car, locked the doors, and left. I called my supervisor the next day and told him I wouldn't be coming back. He didn't seem surprised. He just sighed and said, "You're not the first." I asked him what he meant, but he said he couldn't talk about it on the phone. That was the last time we spoke. A few weeks later, I drove by the office again, just to see if it still felt as eerie. The building was dark. A for lease sign hung in the window. I stopped across the street and stared for a few minutes. Then I saw movement on the second floor just for a second. A figure standing in the hallway, perfectly still. No light behind them, just a shape, watching. I was doing delivery gigs to make extra money food mostly, but sometimes people posted random jobs on Craigslist. One afternoon, I saw a listing that caught my eye. Deliver a package, $200 cash, no questions asked. It sounded sketchy, but I needed the money, and the post didn't ask for any personal info, just said to respond with a name and phone number. I sent mine in, and an hour later, someone texted me from a number with no caller ID. The message was short. Pick up at 5 p.m. sharp. Address. Bring a vehicle. Come alone. I hesitated for a while, but told myself it was probably just someone moving something shady, nothing violent. At 4:50, I pulled up to the address, which turned out to be a rundown duplex in a quiet neighborhood. The blinds were all closed and the porch light was flickering even though it wasn't dark yet. I texted the number to let them know I was outside. A few seconds later, the front door opened just enough for a hand to push something onto the porch. A black duffel bag. No one spoke, no one showed their face. Then the door slowly shut. I stood there for a second, unsure what to do, but I picked up the bag and walked back to my car. It was heavier than I expected. I didn't unzip it. I was told not to ask questions, and honestly, I was scared of what I might find inside. The instructions said to deliver it to a second address 30 minutes away in a rural area on the edge of town. The drive took me through empty roads and woods until I pulled up to a gravel driveway with no house in sight, just a shedway. In the back, I parked, looked around, and texted the number again. This time, I got a reply immediately. Leave it by the shed door. Do not knock. Do not wait. Once dropped, your cash is in the mailbox at the end of the road. I started walking toward the shed. The sun was almost down now, casting long shadows across the trees. Everything felt too still, no wind, no birds, just quiet. As I got closer to the shed, I noticed the door wasn't closed all the way. It hung slightly open, and there was a weird smell in the air, like wet dirt and something metallic. I left the bag by the door, turned around, and walked quickly back to my car. But as I reached the gravel driveway, I heard a noise, wood creaking, like the shed door moving. I didn't turn around. I just walked faster. When I got to the mailbox, I opened it. Sure enough, there was a plain envelope inside with 2 crisp $100 bills. That should have been the end of it. But when I got home, I couldn't stop thinking about that smell, or the way the door had been opened, or how no one ever showed their face. I told myself it was drugs, probably just drugs. But then, 3 days later, someone slipped an envelope under my apartment door. No name, no stamp, just my name written in big shaky letters. Inside was a photo. A photo of me taken from behind while I was walking toward the shed. I stared at it for a long time. The angle meant someone had been standing there watching me, probably just inside the tree line. There was nothing written on the back of the photo, but now I was seriously creeped out. I moved a chair in front of the door that night, locked every window, and kept the lights on while I slept. The next morning, I checked Craigslist again, half expecting to see another ad from the same person. And sure enough, there it was. Delivery job, $300 cash, same rules apply. Same style, same wording. I never replied. I blocked the number, deleted the post, and tried to forget about it. But a week later, another envelope showed up, this time with 2 photos. One of me outside my apartment building, the other of my little sister walking out of her school. I hadn't told anyone I had a sister. She didn't live with me. They must have followed me. I sat there shaking, staring at the photos. I wanted to go to the police, but what would I say? That I delivered a bag for someone I found on Craigslist, didn't ask what was in it, and now they were watching me? I'd get in trouble too. That night, I barely slept. I stayed by the window with a kitchen knife in my lap. Nobody came, but I kept hearing noises, cars passing too slow, branches snapping. The next day, the Craigslist post was gone. So was the number. I never heard from them again. But I moved a few months later, changed jobs, changed my number. I still have the photos. I keep them in a drawer, not because I want to remember, but because I'm afraid one day someone might come back for me. And I want to remember what they look like, even if I never saw their faces. Sometimes when I drive through rural areas, I see sheds that look just like the one from that night. And I wonder how many people answered that ad before me, how many after, and what exactly was in that bag. A couple of years ago, I moved to a new city for a job and needed a place fast. Rent was crazy expensive, so I looked on Craigslist for a shared apartment. After scrolling through dozens of listings, I found one that sounded perfect, $450 a month, utilities included, in a quiet neighborhood just 15 minutes from my office. The ad was short, just said, "Room available for quiet, respectful tenant. No pets. No drama." I replied, and within the hour, a guy named Eric emailed back. He seemed normal enough, told me he worked nights, so he'd mostly be out of the way, and the apartment had a large bedroom available. He said I could come by the next evening for a quick tour. When I showed up, the building looked a little older, but not bad. The apartment was on the 3rd floor, and Eric opened the door. Before I could knock, like he'd been standing there waiting. He was in his late 30s, soft-spoken, a little awkward but polite. The place was clean, maybe too clean. No dishes in the sink, no clutter, no signs of anyone really living there. There were no pictures on the walls, no books or decorations, just blank white paint and empty shelves. Still, I needed a place, and the rent was unbeatable. I moved in 2 days later. At first, things were fine. Eric was quiet, like he said, almost too quiet. I rarely saw him. He always left right around dusk and got back just before sunrise. I figured maybe he worked security or overnight stocking somewhere. We didn't talk much, just exchanged quick hellos in passing. I tried not to be nosy, but a few small things started to bother me. He never let me into his room. The door was always locked, even when he wasn't home. One night, the smell of bleach was so strong it seeped into the hallway. I knocked to ask if everything was okay, but he didn't answer. Later that night, I heard him come out and spray air freshener all through the hallway. Then there was the bathroom mirror. Every couple of days, it would be gone, completely missing from the wall, then reappear like nothing happened. I asked him once, kind of jokingly, "Hey, what's up with the mirror disappearing?" He just smiled and said, "It gets streaky. I clean it outside. I didn't push it." But I started feeling uneasy, like something was just off. Then came the noises. Around 2 or 3 a.m., I'd hear faint tapping like something knocking gently on the wall between our rooms. Then footsteps, soft and slow, pacing in his room, but they never led to the door. They just circled. I started sleeping with my bedroom. Door locked just in case. One night, I came home late from a friend's party. Eric wasn't around, so I figured he was at work. I went into the kitchen to grab a snack, and something caught my eye: his door. It was slightly open, just barely. I knew it was usually locked, and for some reason, I felt this urge to peek. I told myself I'd just take a quick look. Nothing. Crazy. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was freezing cold. No furniture, no bed, just a metal chair in the center facing the window. On the walls were dozens of Polaroid photos taped up in neat rows. They were all of people sleeping. Some were curled up in beds, others on couches. All looked unaware. They were being photographed. I stood there, heart pounding. I looked closer. One of the photos was of me sleeping in my bed. I stepped back shaking, and that's when I heard the door creak behind me. I spun around. Eric was standing there, eyes blank, arms at his sides. He didn't say anything, just stared. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. He took a small step forward. I bolted past him, down the hall, out the front door, and didn't stop running until I reached a 24-hour diner a few blocks away. I called a friend and stayed with her that night. The next day, I went back with the cops. But when we got there, the apartment was completely empty. Every room cleaned out. No Polaroids. No chair, no bleach smell, nothing. It looked like no one had ever lived there. I showed them the listing, the emails, but the Craigslist post was gone. The email address bounced back. I even checked with the building manager, who said the unit had been vacant for months before I moved in. There was no tenant on record named Eric, no rent paid. I asked how I had been let in, how someone gave me keys, but he just looked confused and kept repeating, "Nobody's supposed to be in there." I still don't understand what happened. I found another place, changed my number, deleted all the Craigslist apps from my phone. But I sleep with the lights on now. And sometimes I wake up with the strangest feeling like someone's watching me. I check my room every night, lock my doors, cover my mirror. But there's one thing I haven't done. I haven't looked too closely through the stack of photos I keep in a shoebox under my bed. The ones from my birthday last year. Because I'm scared I'll find one I don't remember taking of me, asleep. I was a college student at the time, trying to get home for Thanksgiving break, but I didn't have a car and all the bus tickets were sold out. Flights were too expensive, and none of my friends were heading my way. I was desperate, so I checked Craigslist's rideshare section. There was a listing posted that morning. Driving east to Ohio can take one passenger, split gas. It was exactly where I needed to go. I texted the number, and the guy replied right away. He said his name was Cal, mid-30s, heading to visit family and leaving around 2 p.m. the next day. He sounded normal, even friendly, and I figured I'd save money and get home in time. I agreed to meet him outside a grocery store near campus. When he pulled up, he was driving an old green Jeep Cherokee with a dent in the side. He looked just like he described, average build, short beard, quiet voice. He opened the passenger door and said, "Let's hit the road." I got in. At first, the ride was fine. He made small talk, asked about school, where I was from, what I was studying. I asked about his job and he just said he was between things. I didn't press him. The highway stretched out in front of us, and after about an hour, the sun started to dip low. That's when things started feeling off. He stopped talking completely. No music, no radio. Just silence. Then he started glancing at me. Not full on. Staring. Just quick, weird little glances every few minutes. I thought maybe I was imagining it, so I stared out the window and tried to relax. But then I noticed something: he kept missing exits. I knew the route well, and he passed 2 major turnoffs. I pointed it out gently, saying, "Hey, I think we were supposed to take that one." But he just said, "Nah, I know a better way." His voice was calm, but flat. I pulled out my phone to check the map. No signal. That was strange, since we weren't that far out of town. I asked if he had a charger I could use, and he said, "Battery's low, better to save it." I nodded, trying not to seem nervous, but something in my gut told me to stay alert. As it got darker, we pulled off the highway onto a narrow 2-lane road cutting through thick woods. I asked where we were going, and he said it was a shortcut. That's when I started seeing less and less around us. No cars, no gas stations. Just trees and empty road. He hadn't said a word in almost 30 minutes, and I was starting to panic quietly. My heart was racing, but I kept a calm face. I casually asked if we could stop soon so I could use the bathroom, and after a long pause he said, "Sure, there's a spot up ahead." We pulled into this little gravel clearing off the road. No lights, no signs, just woods on all sides. He got out of the car too, which immediately made me nervous. He didn't walk far, just stood by the driver's door watching me. I didn't actually have to use the bathroom, I just wanted a reason to get out. I walked a little into the trees, enough to seem believable, and then I pulled out my phone again. Still no signal. But I opened the camera and quickly took a photo of his license plate from behind the trees. I whispered a voice memo to myself describing him, the car, everything I could remember. Then I made a plan. If anything felt even a little worse, I was going to run. I walked back slowly, and he was still standing there, just watching. I smiled and said, "Thanks. I'm good now," and got back into the car. He did too, but this time he locked the doors. I heard the click. My stomach dropped. We drove in silence for another 20 minutes, and then I saw a gas station in the distance. I leaned forward and said, "Hey, can we stop here? I'll buy you a snack or something." He looked at me for a long second, then turned in. As soon as the car stopped, I grabbed my bag and jumped out. I didn't look back. I ran into the gas station and went straight to the clerk, pretending to smile but whispering, "That guy the first came with something's wrong. Can I use your phone?" The clerk's eyes widened just a bit and handed me the store phone. I called my brother, who drove out to get me while the gas station staff kept an eye on Cal, but when my brother got there 20 minutes later, the Jeep was gone. He just vanished. I never saw him again. I tried reporting it to the police. Gave them the photo of the license plate, but they couldn't trace it. Said it didn't match any registered vehicle. I never got a full name. Never found the Craigslist listing again. It had been deleted by the time I checked later that night. I think about it all the time. What would have happened if I hadn't made up that bathroom excuse, or if I hadn't stopped at that gas station? I don't take rides from strangers anymore, not even rideshare apps. Sometimes when I'm driving late at night and I see a green Jeep on the road, I get a horrible feeling in my chest. Because I don't know who he was, where he was really going, or how close I came to disappearing that night, just another missing person no one could explain.